Steuben County, New York. About 20 guys today for day one. All went pretty well. Area here at their landfill. The groups now will be broken down into smaller groups for the 2 days hands-on. Day one they'll be felling, and day two be limbing and bucking. And so trying to locate some other trees to work with here. But, had some pine. This could be kind of an interesting place. Some pretty woolly pine trees, but nothing real large. But we took down for the demo today. We took down a couple pretty good sized maples. Tried to put them on target. They did pretty well. Got to set up for some storm situations for tomorrow, and I think we'll be able to locate what we need here. That'll be pretty good. I had about maybe a third of the class has gone through training before, and so we'll see what they remember tomorrow and how well they do. They don't cut trees every day. They're just part of storm stuff. They do have one crew that kind of works a couple months of the year, mostly during off season, snow season, ice season. You have a bucket and kind of work with removing some dead wood around the roadways, and then they get called in with any cleanup jobs where trees go across the road, highways. So that's kind of the process there. So that's why they want to do the training.
Up there holding a drop, and that might come up just a little bit. Other than that, there's not really any hazards. Nothing's gonna swing up when we notch it down.
So what's gonna be your first cut?
Gonna notch up here, probably just straight down to get rid of that chunk, and then come straight up from the bottom.
So you know, oftentimes when you come across storm stuff like this, you've got stuff, straight line winds or whatever has blown them over together. You know, they're uprooted or whatever. If it's uprooted, you need to do basically the same thing. You'd put a notch underneath and overcut and allow that stump to go back to its original position. You really want it disconnected. You don't want to leave it connected, because a lot of people say, well, yeah, I want to leave it connected. It kind of keeps it up off the ground, maybe keep it from twisting, but you don't know that. And so I always say, you know, if I know it's unstable, I can plan for it. But if I think it's stable and it's unstable, I've screwed up, hadn't I? So you always want to make sure that you disconnect fibers to the stumps or root balls that might be connected. But then you've got these trees that are kind of blown down together. And so you could have rolls, you could have twists, you could have side pressures, because, you know, we talked about when I took that string and shook the tree over the other day, you know, there's a lot of flexibility to the shaft. So if you've got something crisscross or it's around a stump or another tree, it could be something that has some side pressures or up and down and back and forward. This is one end here, so that's one tree, but now you've got this one's back behind it. So, and wherever you choose to cut, I mean, today I've given you the choice to cut on a blue dot, but wherever you choose to cut, you want to kind of think about working back and forth on this and taking both pieces so you don't have anything that's long behind you. If it were to start to roll and this comes across a piece there, then it could move a long ways according to the terrain. So you want to kind of think about working from the butt end on both of those and kind of working up to the top. Same thing if you've got some, you'll have them sometimes like the cherry tree over there that's kind of hung up. You might have a couple of them hung up in another tree. So you want to work those back and forth to get them down. Because when you got two of them there, you got to make sure that you have an out.
So you're saying before we drop this one, we should come back here and get the...
Well, I'm not saying necessarily, because this is kind of one cut there, but whatever you take off back here is removing weight in the top also.
So, because this tree will affect this tree?
Possibly. So if you have cuts to make to start removing this pile across the road, you want to take the longest one, basically, is what I'm saying. It doesn't always, you know, become necessary, but in many cases that's something to think about when you got stuff that's kind of wind thrown straight across.
Coming right down through the top of this one, no notch, no tongue groove.
And that one you can get on that side. I wouldn't work in between the two trees here. And if you work on that blue dot up there first, then you're standing on the right side of it. You're in good shape there. Either way on this one worked out pretty good.
Once we got this off, then Tony wanted to do a tongue and groove there and then step out here and knock it down that way down the hill. So that's what we was thinking.
So what's your cut going to be there? Compression side's where?
It's going to be the top because we think it's going to
Right here,
come straight
okay.
down. So
All right, and you're going to do an offset, you said?
do the notch and
no, he's going to notch.
Oh, you're going to notch and hinge it. So you're going to put a notch on the top and then undercut.
right from the bottom. It should just lay down.
How far can that one move?
About 6 to 8 inches, I guess.
What kind of position do you have to put yourself in to be able to undercut that to a notch? Now you could, I guess, you could angle the notch, couldn't you? To where you can stand up and be able to make the notch. But if you put it horizontal there, where do you have to put yourself? What would be your position? If you have to undercut that and you've got the notch square on top, where do you have to put the saw? Huh? You got to kind of lean over it, or you got to get down on a knee or whatever to be able to cut it straight, because you want to, just like we did yesterday on felling the trees, the hinge should be straight behind the notch. If not, it's going to twist with you, isn't it? Matter of fact, it'll make it twist. So you gotta think about, you need to be parallel to that face notch. But you could put the face notch more on that side over there and then be able to stay that same angle and allow it to hinge down a little bit towards you, couldn't you? But really in that case, probably an offset would be just as valuable as a hinge and notch, wouldn't it? Because you can't move at about 5 or 6 inches at the most. When you do use a notch and a hinge like that and you lower it down, once it gets to ground level, you really don't want to continue cutting up, because where's your compression point? It's at the top, right? So your compression is at that hinge material. So what you do is at that point, you would stand up, take the tip of the bar and just cut your hinge off of it, maybe an inch offset. If you go into where the back V is of your notch, it's going to be ingrained fiber that's probably going to catch your chain. If you go over an inch, then you take the tip and cut down through the depth of your hinge. It can't get to you. And if it does, that fiber in between is actually cut. You let it sit there about 20 seconds, you can get your saw out. But if you go where the V is on the notch, or it hasn't gone all the way down to support the bottom, it's going to pinch your chain. And then the other thing, if you go all the way across with your bar like that, put it down in there, it gives it whatever the diameter is to be able to pinch your bar. If you use a tip, then you're only going to pinch just a couple teeth at most. If you go flat down this way, it can pinch 8 or 10 teeth at one time. The tip of the bar to be able to reduce that hinge might be a good idea. What's the plan on this one now?
We believe it's resting pretty solid on this guy, so we were just gonna
straight cut down?
Yeah. Very, I think.
It's up on this log right here, close to where the dot was. If you're in a storm situation, if you were going to cut, let's say, these pieces here, to be able to eliminate any movement, where's the best place to cut them? Right on top of the other piece, because you know that piece is going to fall down. That even if it comes up, it's always going to be the what? The tension side that you're working from. So if you had your druthers to be able to cut any position out there in storm situation, it would be where it's crossed over another piece in many cases. The other thing is when you start to look at a limb, as you get up into the top of it, where's best place to cut a limb? And you start thinking about, we talked about trees growing in circles yesterday. Is if you look at this now, where a limb goes, watch what happens. However I turn this, however I apply pressure, where does that go back to? So if I've got a limb coming out of that trunk, however it's bent out there, maybe I can't even see where it's bent. Where's that pressure going back to? It goes back to its attachment point. If you have limbs coming out, the best place to actually cut those is at its attachment point to the trunk, or if you're cutting a limb off of another limb, then basically it's at that attachment point. You have a lot less chances of getting stuck there, and you can also see immediately what the pressures are, so if you need to reverse, you can. I finished up day 3 with group 1. All of this area here, we've been able to buck down and get things kind of cut up a little bit. You can see it's still kind of storm damage in here. This area they're clearing out for expansion for the and we we cleaned up a little bit over into here, getting around the trees for the second group. Felled a big maple tree back here that guys did really good on putting together the plan, and so it went right on target. Had a little bit of back lean. We got all this in here kind of bucked down, so we're ready for the second group. Very nice tongue and groove. Got group 2 starting off this morning here at Steuben County, and looks like it's going to be another great weather day. And I already saw a couple of adult bald eagles go by. I hope to get some pictures of that today. But anyhow, we're working in this area over here. We're going to be clearing out some trees as part of the expansion over the next few years for the landfill. But it gives us opportunity to do some great training in here and really be able to work with some different size trees and also some storm damage stuff. So tree was aimed over a little bit too far, went into another smaller tree here and hung up, and more or less had to get it down. We Did a couple notches and hinges trying to move it, but it didn't want to come unhung. So what we did is we took and we bored through and then used a pole to be able to go into that bore cut and triangle and then be able to twist it. And I took one more section off and got it down to the ground safely. One technique that we work with in our storm sawing workshop. So we got 2 3-spring poles that are bent over. Came down a little off course a while ago. And so I'm going to use this one to kind of go through a little presentation on limbing and bucking. 5 steps for a horizontal tree. Something that's on the ground or could be hung up in another tree. We look for hazards first of all, anything overhead or anything around that might come and get you. Second is to look to see, can it roll side to side? Can it go up? Can it go down as you cut through it? Could there be pivots or controlled by more or less a ditch or something that's suspending the log or tree? And then making sure that it doesn't have any back pressure. Then we have to choose some cut to be able to control that, whether it be an offset, a tongue and groove, a hinge and notch. All of those can be used to control it.
If I look to see where the compression is, compression always cut first, tension cut second. So I've got that disconnect. Now let's say I'm going to cut right here. Where's the compression on that one? Huh? On the top. So we basically, we're supported here, we're supported back here. So that means it's going to go down. I can choose a couple different things. If I didn't want that to roll, what options do I have? We talked about the other day. We had an offset cut, we had a tongue and groove, we had a notch and hinge. What technique would keep it from twisting? Notch and hinge would work. What else? Tongue and groove. The other ones can come apart.
We didn't go over it. So, I don't know, you just got this.
We did do that? Oh.
Okay, so you did pass on it.
I did pass them in?
Yeah.
Sure.
Then
I did the correction side first, the top side, right? All I gotta do is bypass that first cut. I want to bypass it at the same angle as done. So all I have to do is just bypass that. So if I had a piece of equipment coming that's actually severed, if you just shake that in, so if a piece of equipment touches it, let it go look like it. There you go. So you see it pops apart. So you got a tongue into a groove joint. So you can't twist until you see it.
That's what you call a ship wrap. You don't have both sides, one way and the other, snap them off top of it. Same system.
So that's what we call a mismatch or offset. So some people call it snap cut. Working on it like that.
You can get the saw shut off down here, grab it, snap them off.
And so that we use horizontal also. And I'll show you that next. So here I can do an offset up and down. So I can press it again on top. And here I can get under. So that's an offset or snap cut that you can use horizontally. You can also set it up vertically. So if you're right on the ground, basically, you can be able to just drop down level. You know it's moving forward, right? So it's going to be back on this side. You got to find that. Try to stay the same angle. The natural shape angle. So tongue and groove came apart. It's bypass. If a piece of equipment hits it, that one's cracked off, and then this one. That one's so the more you leave on there, in other words, you could offset, if you wanted to make sure that it didn't move, you could offset a foot. Yeah. And this one, I think, works really good where if you have a, you'll see them sometimes after storm, the tree kind of twists over, all splintered like that one. If you try to cut one side, it's going to try to go back to its original position. It'll grab your chain every time. But if you bore cut through, and then offset and offset, or you come up real thin on both sides, then it keeps it from grabbing your sausage. It won't twist the meat, and it won't grab your sausage. Because all those fibers in the middle are relieving. So it's taking all the twist out of it. But you know, it takes about a 1/16 of an inch, and your saw chain's stuck. That's all it takes, just a little bit of turn. That's the reason why we always want to put some type of a notch and a hinge if you're lowering something. Like here now, if I think about here, out. I don't think I have anything else holding. So where's my compression on it now, bottom or top? Bottom. So there I can use a slide notch and an overcut. And this is something important. If I just whack a log off, it can hit the ground and roll. Sometimes it rolls at you, sometimes away from you. If I use a notch and hinge, I let that in touch, then I cut it off, it drops straight. And same thing if I'm cutting a limb, is I can let that limb drop and then cut it off, and it doesn't come shooting back. Now, if you're doing a slide notch on top to lower something down in the middle, you usually want to take that tang, I call it, off of it. Because on the bottom, it'll slide away from it as you cut it. But on top, it stops your movement. And that puts pressure on the hinge. So it's very easy to be able to think about it. Open it on top. It can be just a slice on the bottom. If I go in straight, though, it closes in about 3/8 inch movement. So at that point, your hinge has to give up. Something has to split. But if I go this way, then it gives it an opening to be able to move into. And so here I've got pressure on which side? The pressure's on this side. I put a little. You want to lower that down? go out here and cut it, I don't know how far it's going to move. And once I see where that pressure is, then I can work it. I pass another limb. Every place I offset it. See there, I didn't put it off. Have you ever been stuck? So if I put it on, it doesn't twist so fast. And you can see it with the hinge. And usually it gives you a fulcrum to be able to get out if you need to. But one thing you want to be cautious of, come here and look and see it. If you do get stuck, you don't want to pull the bar and your feet away from the bar.
I bet you didn't close. Real close. We're going right there. Well, this is good. Once this straightens out, that's going to be out here quite a ways. We're going right there.
Now remember now, don't stick your whole bar over it, because those move fast. And don't forget your ears too. And don't forget 45 to the rear. Your first mark was dead on.
Yeah, it was. Your second guess. Good.
Well, I finished up with the groups today, and they did a great job on all the storm stuff that we had set up. But each one of the 4 piles came out reduced down really nice. They had some big stuff, some little stuff, high and low, and they were able to take and be able to plan it, take it all down using different cuts. It's been a good week up in New York. Looking forward to Alabama next week. Thank y'all for watching. Please subscribe, tell those around you, because you know there's so many things that we see and we do and we practice and we share, and so that gives us the opportunity to hopefully save somebody from some injury. So good sawing to you. See you next time.